Okay, so I did it. 13.1 miles. Ran the San Diego Half Marathon. This is Jesse Gonzalez here with Coastal College Counseling at the Petco Park Within a Park event after the San Diego Marathon. Took me a couple hours to run it. I'll go into that a little bit later in detail, but a wonderful event. A lot of great people here, just all walks of life, and a good event. I mean, just during the running alongside and behind and in front of people, a variety of people was exciting. The actual run itself was pretty intense, and with a couple of hills involved in there. And I'm a hill runner, so I like hills because of just the metaphor of life type of thing. But goodness, that ninth mile, that mile and a half hill, ninth mile was tough. But here we go. So one of the things I want to talk about now at the conclusion of the half marathon is the idea of goal setting. And how goal setting pertains to some of the things that lead to success in your life or academics, whether it be relationships or school or profession, and how goal setting can really compel you to be successful. So one of the important things about knowing about goal setting, proper goal setting, is to make sure that you're always setting specific goals. And so in my case, when I set out to run this marathon, I gave myself a couple of months. I hadn't run a half marathon in the past, and I thought maybe 2 months would give me enough time, and so that was specific enough for me. But within that overarching goal of running a half marathon in 2 months, I had specific checkpoint goals that I had to adhere by. For instance, running day-by-day goals and week-by-week goals all the way up until the day of the race. Now, those goals change, and those goals are adjusted based on the timing and just sometimes emotions and attitudes and things like that. Life happens. But nonetheless, I had those two things kind of nailed down, and that was specific checkpoint goals and then also an overarching goal of running the marathon. So very, very important to make sure that you're always setting specific goals, whether it be with your GPA, whether it be with the type of grades that you want to get, or whether it be with what you want to perform in the workplace. Either way, it's important to make sure that you set specific goals. The second thing to keep in mind is to make sure that they're always measurable. And so for me, it was one thing to have a measurable goal of running a marathon in 2 months, but the other piece to that is making sure that I trained to try to get in within 2 to 2.5 hours of my time. That was a specific measurable goal for me, about as measurable as it can get. You can't really pinpoint a time limit on how long it's going to take you unless you're a professional marathoner perhaps. But for me, it was important that I get in within 2 to 2.5 hours. Now, the official time was 2 hours and 16 seconds. My watch was about an hour and 50 some minutes. So I don't know. We'll have to look into that later. But anyhow, I was able to get within that goal that I set for myself with regard to the measurements. The other thing that you want to make sure to think about is that your goal is an attainable goal, and that you hold yourself accountable to it. The way to hold yourself accountable is by sharing that goal with someone else. If you can tell someone, share your aspirations, share your goals with someone, or even join someone in taking part in those goals, it makes it a lot easier to reach those goals because you have someone that's keeping you accountable. Now, also, you want to make sure that person is trustworthy and someone that is going to have your best interest in mind when you tell them, someone that's going to actually support you and encourage you. And so that's important to know. But accountability is a big piece. So you've got specific, measurable, accountable goals. The next thing is to be realistic about your goals. Now, for me to have said I was going to run a half marathon in a week, not realistic. But 2 months, definitely realistic. And after having set those checkpoint specific goals in place, I knew that I could probably get within 2 to 2.5 hours based on my training. So specific, measurable, accountability, and realistic is extremely important. One of the last goals to think about, or one of the last sort of checkpoints to think about when setting goals is a timetable. Give yourself a timetable, something that allows you to kind of pull a calendar out and give yourself some time to accomplish these little checkpoint goals to kind of get to that overarching goal that you have in mind, and make it so that the timetable is realistic to where you are in your life and how much time you have to devote to it. So that's extremely important, right? Making sure that you have a timetable and when you're going to achieve these goals and how long you plan to take with each checkpoint goal. Very important. The last thing that I want to make sure that we think about, and probably the most important, is the evaluation piece. So you've got specific, measurable, accountability, realistic timetable or time frame, and evaluation, probably the most important. So once all is said and done, and once you've finished your event or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, then you want to make sure to take some time to sit down. For me, it's journaling. I journal a lot, and I reflect a lot on my experience, and I do that by by taking some time to myself and just kind of relaxing. And that's my way of evaluating my goals. Now, I've got to be real with myself and make sure that whether I really met my goals or I didn't meet my goals. And if I did meet my goals, then I celebrate them. And I celebrate them, by different ways, spending time with my family, or just, kind of taking some time to relax, maybe watching a movie or reading a book. But if you don't reach your goal, it's okay. It's totally fine. It just means that you've got to tweak things a little bit more, and you've got to go back to the drawing board. That still doesn't mean that you can't celebrate. You can still celebrate even having not met your specific goals, because it's important to make sure that you always unwind. That's one of the most important things. And you can do that by meditating, again, reading a book, maybe spending some time with some family, or whatever it is that makes you happy and allows you to just kind of take some time off and rejuvenate. Then you can bounce back and begin the next goal setting process for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. This was an amazing event for me. I'm extremely grateful. There were a lot of people that came together here in this community to make this happen. One of the things I noticed that I was extremely grateful about were just the people on the sides of the road that were encouraging everyone else. There was one person on the side of the road who had a sign up that said, it was the Super Mario sign that said, "Tap here for a power up." And I tapped it because that was all I needed at that point to kind of get me forward and get me going. And that was right before the 1.5 mile hill run. So I needed that support. And so if you're a parent of young students or young kids, and you've got kids that are sort of not really meeting their standards or expectations, or your expectations and your standards, it's really important to make sure that you help them with these goal setting strategies. But while they're going through the marathon or school year, it's important that you're there for support, that you encourage them through all these checkpoints, and that you just give them that voice so that they know that you're there to help. But really, really try to avoid carrying them through the rough times and carrying them through those hills, because that's a life skill that our kids are going to have to learn early on, and something that they will really be able to benefit from. So with having said that, if you'd like to hear more about my philosophies, and you'd like to see my blogs or read my blogs and watch my videos, please log on to coastalcollegecounseling.com, and I'll see you at the next event. Take care.